Hey folks, you know that stress abounds in our world today. I know it's a shock. You won't believe me, but it is the truth in our age that we live in. There always seems to be more added to our to-do list. We have more appointments to keep than we did years ago. And this stress isn't exactly age group exempt. It doesn't care if you're young, old, middle-aged. It doesn't matter. Our youth have more expectations on them than previously. And as elderly, there's also more to juggle in your retirement. Yet joy can be found, and not just in that 1 week you go down the shore in the summer. There's more joy to be found year-round because it comes from the mighty God whom we worship. And we can see that through the stress that we endure as part of life and part of our human experience, that there is exceeding joy to be found if we rely on God's strength. And in doing so, we can actually choose a joyful living over a stressful one. And so now, friends, I invite you to join with me in diving into Scripture and see what God has in store for us today. Now, as we begin our second lesson with James, as he writes to an early Christian community, these Jewish brothers and sisters following Christ, and Gentile believers as well, I can imagine there was some stress, not only from their persecution they were getting from all sides, but indeed just being part of human beings on this great earth. But his perspective is a little different. As you will probably see up here, stress certainly has a lot of things going on, because a little bit of stress in the green arrow down there is okay as human beings. It's manageable and part of life. Even that middle one isn't so bad. There's times life is a bit more stressful, a bit more busy at work or with family obligations. But when we go off the charts there, that's when we got to worry about things. And so James's words might be hard for us to hear because he says, consider it joy when you go through trials, stress, or temptations. That can be a tough pill to swallow, because how is it that stress should be an occasion or considered joyful? Well, James certainly went into that as he continued to write to his community, talking about how it is stress is useful to the person. And so, as I thought about it this week and how to kind of illustrate that to all of you, what came to mind was different ways we understand stress. For in the same word, we have many different meanings. Stress can be the things that we feel when deadlines and obligations come up. But stress is also a way that our bodies grow. And so for that, we have this right here. For you see, when we exercise, the most basic thing we're doing is you're stressing out your body. So regardless of what activity we see up here that we like, whether it's golf, cycling, a bit of swimming, soccer maybe, some tennis, basketball, whatever it is, whatever our exercise or sport of choice, when you do these things, you're stressing your body out. But not to an extent that you're usually hurting yourself, but just you're asking your body to do things where the muscles get tired. And if it's in the case of some weightlifting or anything like that, you're also tearing some muscle fibers so that new ones can grow and you can get that nice bicep muscle. But indeed, all the way around, this isn't unhealthy stress. This is stress that allows you to become a better athlete, a better dancer, a better person. Again, it's all about how we see stress. For as James writes, he says this, you know that the testing your faith produces endurance. He didn't have to convince them. It was something we all know, that when you put something to the test, usually there's growth. You don't test something to break it. You test it to see how it is now and how it can be improved. And the same goes for us in our faith. And so he invited that early Christian community to understand that principle, that stress, trials, and temptations really are ways for us to grow if we but see it from that new perspective. And so he encouraged them to let this endurance complete its work so that you may be fully mature, complete, and lacking in nothing. You see, friends, as we sit here or stand here today, there are indeed many occasions in which our faith is put to the test. Maybe it's because we've had a very trying day at work. Maybe that 8-hour day, which is more realistically about 10 hours when you factor in commuting, preparations at home and at the workplace. Maybe you find yourself a little out of stock of some kindness and patience for people. And indeed, as we live in a stressful world, everybody's kind of in a rush and looking to get more and more done. But again, as we consider that, it's a chance for us to see it as a new opportunity to grow our kindness, to practice more patience. Because, you know that funny story about praying to God for more patience, but I want it now, Lord. And God's like, really? That's ironic. No. But indeed, if we have a new perspective on stress, as James instructs, then maybe indeed we do see the stresses of life, the stresses of work and of home, and even the testing of our faith as opportunities to let us build up endurance. So the next time we encounter that difficult situation, that difficult person, or even that time where our faith is tested, we indeed can come out stronger for it, more mature, more complete, and lacking nothing. But of course, if we're being put to the test, sometimes we will find ourselves in need or in want. We find ourselves saying, wow, I was tested, and I was found to be lacking in a bit of patience, a bit of kindness this week. Maybe I need to believe a bit more. I need to study and pray a bit more. That's what I found myself lacking in this week's testing, or period of stress. But even James has a bit of encouragement on that end as well. As he finished talking about being put to the test and seeing occasions, these trying times as occasions for joy, he invites us all to see that God is more than willing to supply. If we but ask, we may yet receive. It harkens back to something Jesus said to his disciples, talking about ask and you'll receive, seek and you'll find, knock and the door shall be opened. Believe it or not, my friends, we worship a God who is more than willing, as James puts it, to provide the things we need. And so this very popular and well-known passage from Matthew's Gospel comes to mind. For if we find ourselves after a period of trials and testing, after we've been stressed out, we find we need something. Well, isn't it beautiful that we worship a God who's willing to provide? And again, it's if we but ask is the condition. It's not that we have to be proven to be great people. It's not that we have to be proven to be the best of the best. It's on the simple principle and understanding, God bless you, that we ask God and He will provide. That we seek out something and we may yet find it. That we knock on the door, even the gates of heaven, and God will open them up to us. As James encourages, he says, hey, if any of you lack wisdom, ask for it, for God won't even hesitate. He will provide without holding it against you, without keeping score. The only thing James encourages, ask without doubting. Because isn't that part of what happens when we encounter stress? That stress has this incredible, crippling, and overwhelming power to make us feel underprepared, ill-equipped, and altogether lost. We can become immobilized by stress to the point where we won't even ask, we won't even seek, and we certainly won't be knocking on any doors to try and help ourselves out. But the encouragement is that you worship a God who says, just come. Just come and ask for help, and it will be provided. And so his encouragement is, don't doubt that assistance. For as we have seen from Genesis all the way to Revelation, folks, there is a God who is more than willing to help. We don't see many instances in which God's people cry out and God says, nope, I'm not taking calls today. I'm not taking prayer requests today. Instead, we find a God who's willing to help out time and time again throughout our human history. And James encourages us not to doubt that assistance. That if we're going to ask God for help on this week's test or this week's meeting at work, well, guess what? God will provide. He just wants us to believe that He'll actually help. And by doing so, we grow in our faith. We practice that reliance upon God. That God can provide if we but believe with all of our hearts. And therefore, God gives us the assistance we need through those times of stress and temptation. But I think all of this leads us to the simple fact that there is joy to be found amidst everything in life. And for that we go back all the way to the book of Psalms. For troubles were not something unique just to the New Testament. There was plenty of it in the Old Testament. And as King David writes here, he is mindful that when times are difficult, when his mind is anxious and worried, he remembers who was with me when people stood against me, who was by my side when evildoers surrounded me. It was the Lord who helped me. And I would have gone quickly to the land of silence, the land of the dead, if it were not for God. And David says, he said, there were times when I was falling, but your constant love, O Lord, helped me up. Again, whatever it is we're falling into, whether it's that temptation to kind of say some unkind and unchristianly words to someone who cuts us off in traffic, whether it's not really having the patience for our children or grandchildren, whether it's just falling into that temptation to tell a white lie or any other type of evil thing, it is God who is always by our side to provide that assistance. And we can take joy in that, can we not? Friends, we worship a God who's always with us, who's always able to provide, and has not let us down yet. There is a lot of joy in worshiping a God like that. Amen? There is indeed. For God is always going to help us out if we but ask and truly, truly believe. And so, friends, take joy. When life gets stressful, when the temptations come, take a moment like David to think about how God has been with you in the past. Because if you remember that, you're probably going to stand a lot firmer in your faith in the present. Because you'll look back and say, He was with me when I was young. He was with me when I was growing up. And He's with me now. And He'll provide that assistance. And so this difficulty, it really was just this tiny little speck of dust. And I can overcome it because the God of all creation is with me right here and right now. And He is going to lend me strength and endurance. And He's going to give me the faith I need, even if I don't exactly think it. He'll give it all the same. And so, friends, as you encounter life's many stresses, do it with joy. Because you see a God who's with you. You see a great company of people around you. Maybe not always physically, but supporting you and providing assistance. That in the grand scheme of things, as you take it from God's perspective, there is joy abounding. That you're good. And as we see up here, I would encourage you not to be just joyous for the sake of being joy, not whimsically or without reason. For one of the things that comes about from this movie, if you don't know who this is, by the way, this is Joy. She's a character. And in a very popular movie just in recent years called Inside Out, it shows you us a little bit of our emotions that go on in our heads. But an encouragement to say, don't be joyous for the sake of joy. For one of the lessons from this film was that joy alone could not stand, but needed other emotions of sadness, of fear, of disgust and anger to balance out the human experience. And so I'm not telling you to go out there just because it says to be joyful, to constantly be joyous. No, go through life's seasons. If it is a season of difficulty, endure it. If you are supporting a friend who is having a time of sadness, grief, be there. But you can find that gladness in knowing even during life's difficulties, the times of trials and testing, someone is with you all the while. And so we encourage you then, take the joy of the Lord as your strength. For indeed that joy is always available to you, in any time and in all places. So folks, I encourage you to choose a life that is joyous, and that by showing that joy amidst the stress, you may indeed grow from strength to strength, increase your endurance for the good work you are called to do, and above it all, to stand. Thanks be to God. Amen.